Good evening, ReNEWS English is on air. I'm Sona Tumanyan. International media has arrived in Armenia. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan on Fox News. In the interview, the Prime Minister of Armenia addressed the peace agreement initialed in Washington, stressing that he considers it a very important document that could bring significant benefits to all countries, as well as to the entire international community within the framework of international stability and security. He spoke specifically about the Crossroads of Peace project, noting that it could truly become a crossroads of cooperation.
I think yesterday's agreement and declaration contains quite tangible benefits for Iran and for Russia as well. Because in case and when this agreement will be implemented, for example, Iran would have access through railway from Persian Gulf to the Black Sea, and Russia and Iran will have opportunity to have a railway connection between two countries. I mean that yes, if we will be concentrated on economic side of this agreement, not only Armenia, Azerbaijan, United States, but Turkey, but Russia and Iran will have very important, very tangible benefit.
The noise from the ongoing discussions around the initial peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan does not cease. Benefit, harm, risk, opportunity, advantage, or the list is long and the counter-arguments are numerous. My colleague Ani Hovanesyan has discussed the potential consequences of the already published document with a lawyer and has also included a comment from a member of parliament from the civil contract faction.
The United States has mediated many peace treaties throughout history, but experience has shown that the U.S.'s efforts for the peaceful resolution of conflicts have almost always been in vain. From the Russo-Japanese War and the Paris Peace Conference to the Dayton Agreement to end the war between Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, and Croatia, the famous Camp David summit, then again the Israel-Palestine negotiations, the Oslo Accords between Israel and Palestine. What guarantees do we have that history's bitter experience will not be repeated in our case?
And almost all states, one way or another, violate international law or their international political obligations. There is no guarantee.
Lawyer Ara Gazarian sees many risks for Armenia in the initial document.
But those who know the context of this conflict understand that this is an asymmetrical document. For example, there is not a single word here about the 120,000 forcibly displaced Armenians, whereas in Azerbaijan there are no forcibly displaced people left. The 300,000 that Aliyev talks about is a number he invented.
The lawyer points out that the parties commit to assisting each other in searching and returning the bodies of the deceased, but other issues are bypassed.
This regulates the searching for remains, but it doesn't regulate the rights of the living, nor does it provide even a minimal mechanism for their legal protection. And here there is only one phrase stating that the issues between the states presented to interstate complaints will be resolved in another way after the complaints are withdrawn. This is already strange.
The initial document must be followed by the signing of a more detailed document. The one signed at the White House is too declarative in nature and gives Azerbaijan room to maneuver, the lawyer believes. Hasmik Hakopyan, a member of parliament from the civil contract faction, does not share the lawyer's opinion. She says the initial document is mirrored in nature and Armenia's economy will prosper after the unblocking of communications.
We spoke about all the main points before it was initialed, even before announcing that the text was ready. This means there is nothing hidden, and everyone can attest to that. No one can interpret it as they wish because it is written and certified. These aren't just verbal talks.
According to the MP, humanitarian issues have their own time for resolution, and now is not that moment.
For humanitarian issues, peace on the ground is also favorable, so that these issues can also be addressed and resolved more easily. But to make peace conditional on such issues only delays the resolution of those humanitarian issues.
Various measures will be taken to normalize relations with Azerbaijan, possibly of a cultural or sporting nature, the MP believes.
Some time must pass. As I said, the countries must have some mutual benefit. They must also start to to have certain business interests, right? And we now want to open these communications for cargo.
Hesmi Hakopian notes that even documents signed under the best conditions do not guarantee peace. It is necessary to be guided by common economic interests. Ara Gazarian is convinced this agreement is the price of military failure for which we are now paying. Ani Hovanesson, ReOpen Media.
Well, since we're on the subject of documents signed at the White House, let's also talk about the Trump Street project. Are the prospects for genuine cooperation visible here? Will there be investments? Armenia's opposition figures argue this area is not particularly favorable for the economy, while the governing force states that this is a good prospect for new opportunities and the possibility of a large influx of investments, which according to the Prime Minister's assertion also fits within the logic of the crossroads of peace. Monica Hairoyan has been following this clash of opinions.
This is going to be the largest investment program in the history of the Third Republic.
Nikol Pashinyan made the statement in Washington after the initiation of the peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Pashinyan is confident that the U.S. will make large investments in various sectors of Armenia. The State Department also released a similar statement.
The leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia also signed bilateral economic agreements with the U.S., which unlock the significant potential of the South Caucasus in trade, transit, energy, infrastructure, and technology, as well as create new opportunities for Americans and American companies.
According to Haik Gevorkian, a member of parliament from the civil contract faction of the National Assembly, these agreements will allow Armenia to receive investments and develop its infrastructure, especially in the technology sector. The member of the Parliamentary Economic Committee considers it important that Armenia profits in this case rather than becoming a servant of foreign interests.
You know, since independence, Armenia has not experienced the situation that normal countries live in, with open borders, not surrounded by hostile countries. And for us, this is essentially unusual. But if everything goes as it is going now, certainly not only American investments, but investments in general, a country whose future is predictable, which is not subjected to such shocks, is much more attractive for business.
However, according to economist Rait Kamendatian, there's another problem here. We have forgotten about Georgia. The potential flow of energy carriers along Trump's route could hit Georgia's annual transit revenue of about $900 million from Azerbaijan. And for this very reason, Georgia will obstruct the implementation of such a project in every possible way.
First, Georgia is a loyal state. Georgia is the most favorable route, so to speak, between Azerbaijan and Turkey. We are not that most favorable route. Whether it's Trump, or after Trump, some Tom Jones or Jones-Tom, it doesn't matter. Regarding this corridor, we will never have the loyal, secure environment that Georgia has with its two neighbors, that Muslim connection.
In the context of the 42-kilometer route, according to The Economist, we have two problems. Although our transit route is shorter, the energy carriers passing through Armenian territory cannot be fully utilized due to capacity limitations. Modeling shows that Armenia's net profit will be a maximum of about $40 million per year.
Is $40 million really an amount where we can claim there are economic gains, there are economic interests, and those economic interests are being realized to some extent? Of course not. Let me give just one example. An amount on the order of that $40 million, about 15 billion drams, is paid into the state budget of the Republic of Armenia by shoemakers, bakers, let's say drivers, and various small, tiny SMEs. Those are the components of those small and micro enterprises.
The economic motives and potential gains for Armenia, according to Kamendatian, will not be reflected in impressive numbers. It is obvious that the issue here is predominantly political, and this agenda is being pushed forward by misleading naive people who lack financial or economic education, convincing them that the country will supposedly receive hundreds of millions of dollars in income.
Should I call it that agreement, or more accurately, a paper of humiliation? Hours after signing that paper, the leader of the Republic of Armenia, during a conversation with those journalists, was insisting that hundreds of billions of dollars will come to Armenia. Hundreds of billions of dollars will not come to Armenia. That is a lie.
MP Haik Gevorkian, on the contrary, assures that there will be a flow of investments into Armenia, pointing to a number of sectors and branches that can become magnets for investment.
That is agri-food processing, that is the IT sector, that is the engineering sector, which has traditionally always existed and has been developing at a very fast pace in recent years, even under these conditions. For example, if you look at how much processed food was exported from Armenia 6, 7, or 8 years ago, and how much is exported now, you will be very surprised, because the volumes have multiplied many times over. For example, in the IT sector, we have developments that we couldn't have even dreamed of a few years ago.
Armenia's economic situation is multi-layered. Economic liberalization and new investment opportunities could have a positive impact on GDP and exports. But according to some economists, the discrepancy between statistical data and the standard of living, along with the instability of the investment environment, are concerning. For stable and long-term growth, both the favorable investment environment and transparency and reliability in state governance are necessary. Monica Hairoyan, ReOpen Media.
While we are discussing the roads stipulated in the documents, Donald Trump is talking about Armenia's roads. Let's listen to the 47th U.S. president.
But I said, what do you think? He said, well, the roads are better in Armenia than they are in Washington, D.C. It's embarrassing.
The State Department's 2024 Human Rights Report states that Armenia's constitution and law prohibit arbitrary arrest and detention and provide for the right of any person to challenge the legality of their arrest or detention in court, and that the Armenian government has not always respected these requirements. I'll quote, according to human rights defenders, the police sometimes arrested people without official charges as a form of punishment. Lawyers noted that court decisions to detain people were unpredictable as defendants in similar circumstances were subjected to different restrictions. The report from the United States Foreign Policy Agency states. Armenia is preparing for the EAEU conference, which will take place on September 4th in Yerevan. The event's organizer, Meher Avedissian, has stated that during the conference, relations between Armenia and the Eurasian Economic Union and the impact of the EAEU on the prospects for Armenia's economic and political development will be discussed. And today, the regular session of the Eurasian Intergovernmental Council has begun in the city of Cholpan-Ata, Kyrgyzstan. Armenia's representative is Deputy Prime Minister Meher Grigoryan. And now we're going to Alaska, which has become the center of the world. Tomorrow could be very decisive for both Russia and especially for Ukraine. For the first time since his election, Trump and Putin will meet in Anchorage. The end of the war will pave the way for a Nobel Prize, and if about a month ago my use of the phrase dove of peace sounded sarcastic, now it has a serious ring of truth to it. Zelensky, as we have already mentioned, considers this meeting a personal victory for Putin. He will not be in Alaska, but tomorrow everything will resolve about Ukraine. Trump expects to get the answer he wants. By the way, just yesterday, I was looking at the chronology of meetings between Putin and US presidents. April 6, 2008, a meeting with George Bush. November 2015, a meeting with Barack Obama. June 16, 2021, a meeting with Joe Biden. June 28, 2019, the Trump-Putin meeting. And after so many handshakes, what will happen tomorrow?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held negotiations in Berlin with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and participated in virtual meetings with European leaders and U.S. President Donald Trump, focusing on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the Trump-Putin summit. The negotiations included issues of strengthening Ukraine's defense, ensuring Kyiv's involvement in the peace process, and coordinating Western support. Zelensky and European leaders emphasized the protection of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity to counter Russia's military diplomatic pressure. During a meeting with journalists at the Kennedy Center, Donald Trump shared his thoughts on the upcoming meeting.
It was always going to be, I was going to meet with President Putin, and then after that, I'm going to call the leaders and President Zelensky. I'm going to call President Zelensky, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders. There's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first, because the first is I'm going to find out where we are and what we're doing. Again, this is Biden's war. This isn't my war. He got us into this thing, and it should have never happened. This war would have never happened if I were president. But it is what it is, and I'm here to fix it.
The Russian MFA also commented on the upcoming visit, stressing the importance of the meeting and presenting Russia's position on the issue.
This meeting is being prepared thanks to the will of the President of Russia and U.S. President Donald Trump. As for the principled position on resolving the crisis, Russia's position remains unchanged, and it was voiced in this hall a little over a year ago.
EU leaders also reaffirmed their positions. French President Emmanuel Macron and European Council President Antonio Costa reiterated that no decision regarding Ukraine's fate can be made without its participation.
The first thing is that President Trump was very clear on the point that the American will for this meeting in Alaska was to achieve a ceasefire. And this is very important, that a ceasefire, which we support, is indeed possible on the occasion of this meeting. The second point is that territorial issues concerning Ukraine must be negotiated only with the participation of the President of Ukraine. President Trump clearly expressed his position, which is a good sign leading up to the upcoming meeting.
The Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska on Friday, according to general opinion, could become an important impetus for the peaceful settlement of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict, but questions regarding possible territorial concessions still remain uncertain. David Genjoyan, ReOpen Media.
Zelensky promised not to discuss territorial issues during a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, U.S. President Donald Trump announced during an online conference with European leaders. According to NBC News, many European leaders got the impression that Trump was not overly optimistic about the outcome of the meeting with Putin. Earlier, Donald Trump had stated that a peace agreement regarding Ukraine would include a certain exchange of territories and that Zelensky must be ready to sign something. But this optimistic note is further tempered by Trump threatening Russia with sanctions, of course, in the event of a failure to reach an agreement on a ceasefire. Let's watch the World News feed in one video together.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Berlin to meet with European leaders ahead of the U.S.-Russia summit, emphasizing Kyiv's strategic interests. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that he warned U.S. President Donald Trump before negotiations with Vladimir Putin that the Russian leader is bluffing about his desire to end the war. Speaking in Berlin with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Zelensky noted that Putin is applying pressure on all parts of the Ukrainian front to demonstrate that he can capture the entire country. He emphasized that territorial issues must be discussed during a trilateral meeting with Ukraine's participation. In Belgrade, police intervened to end confrontations between supporters of the ruling Serbian Progressive Party and anti-government protesters. President Aleksandar Vučić accused foreign forces of organizing the unrest and promised arrests, while demonstrators demand early elections, blaming corruption for the collapse of the Novi Sad railway station. The protests began last November following the disaster that caused the deaths of 16 people. Syria and Turkey held high-level meetings in Ankara, which resulted in the signing of a military cooperation agreement focused on military training, consultation, and personnel exchange to strengthen the capabilities of the Syrian army. The agreement includes counter-terrorism, demining, cyber defense, military engineering, logistics, and peacekeeping operations, with both sides accusing Israel of fomenting instability in Syria. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan emphasized that Syria's security is a priority for Turkey, but warned that if Turkey's security demands are not met, particularly regarding Kurdish militants, Turkey may take additional actions. Kim Yo-jong, the sister of the North Korean leader, stated that they have not dismantled the propaganda loudspeakers and do not intend to do so, calling South Korea's peace proposals an illusion. She called the military drills of South Korea and the U.S. useless, insisting that the allies' hostile intentions have not changed. David Genjoyan, ReOpen Media.
Another Thursday, another government session, which was chaired by Deputy Prime Minister Tigran Khachaturian as Prime Minister Pashinyan is on leave until the end of the week. The session's agenda includes 51 items. 48 of them are non-reportable, 2 are reportable, and 1 is classified. On the agenda are issues about approving the procedure for implementing measures to encourage a healthy lifestyle and promote alternative forms of transportation among the public, as well as accepting and registering property as a donation. The executive body has decided to exempt members of the Armenian national football team Albert Khachumian, Karen Melkonyan, and Arsen Sadoyan from compulsory military service. Southampton is ready to pay 12 million euros for the transfer of Eduard Sperțian, the midfielder for the Armenian national team and Russian champion Krasnodar. The 25-year-old footballer has confirmed that the English club has made an offer for this transfer. According to the national team's leading player, everything is serious, but it is still too early to talk about the move. He still needs to consult with Krasnodar's president Sergei Galitsky before making a decision. I am Sona Tumanyan. Stay informed with ReNews. Goodbye.